bodyweight push-up is one of the best exercises you can practice to help strengthen your upper body, and that can include your back, your chest, your shoulders, your arms, as well as your abs. Although it might seem like a simple movement, the bodyweight push-up is very difficult to master, and there are a few common mistakes that people make when practicing their push-ups. So what I'm going to do for you is offer you 3 tips to think about next time you're practicing your push-ups to help you get the most out of your push-ups. And I'm going to show you a simple test you can do with the dowel rod to ensure that you're doing push-ups with proper body alignment. So what I'm going to do is quickly run through the 3 tips that I mentioned, and then I'm going to try to string it all together at the end when I show you that test to see if you can do perfect push-ups. The first tip I'd like to offer is with regards to shoulder positioning. When you're doing push-ups, you always want to make sure that your shoulders are in an externally rotated position as opposed to an internally rotated position. You want your shoulders in an externally rotated position because what this does is make sure that the muscles around your upper back are pulling your shoulder blades together, effectively lifting your chest up and drawing the shoulders back. So it's a very posturally sound type of position, externally rotating the shoulders as opposed to an internal rotation at the shoulders. And what creates this sort of situation is that the chest is tight, the pec minor is tight, and a group of muscles here at the front of the body are constantly tight and they're pulling your shoulder blades together. Now while that's happening and the shoulders are rolled forward, at the same time your upper back starts to become really long and really weak. So first tip is you always want to make sure your shoulders are externally rotated, so you're pushing in this sort of fashion, not letting your shoulders roll forward, pushing in this sort of fashion with the disengaged upper back. That's tip 1. The second tip I'd like to offer is also with regards to shoulder positioning. When you're doing a push-up, you always want to make sure that your shoulders are drawn down away from the ears and they're never moving up towards the ears. You want to make sure your shoulders are down because what this does is it effectively recruits your lats as a shoulder stabilizer. When you keep your shoulders down, it allows you to use your chest more effectively, and you're going to have a lot more strength in this position because your shoulders are down and attached to the body. So this drawing down of the shoulders is the opposite of letting the shoulders shrug. The reason you don't want to let your shoulders shrug or lift is because as soon as that happens, your shoulders detach away from the body. So you effectively disengage your lats, you lose a lot of shoulder stability because your back is not involved anymore, and you begin to use a lot more neck, a lot more chest, a lot more shoulders and arms, all working in a sort of isolatory fashion as opposed to getting everything to work together in conjunction. So second big tip is to really make sure your shoulders are drawn down away from the ears in a forcible type of fashion. The third tip I'd like to offer you is with regards to your hip position. Now you always want to be in a neutral hip position. So in order to understand what a neutral hip position is, I'm going to first show you what an excessively anterior pelvic tilt is and an excessively posterior pelvic tilt is. I'm going to stand from the side because it's easier to view this way. If you view your hips or your pelvis as a bowl, an excessively anterior pelvic tilt is when the front of the bowl here tilts forward, and a posterior pelvic tilt is when the back of the bowl tilts back. You don't want to be in either position. You want to be somewhere in the middle is a neutral hip position. So if I'm moving from a neutral hip position, an anterior pelvic tilt would be the front of the bowl tilting forward, okay, really poking my butt out and really contracting and asking for a lot of work out of my low back, too much work out of my low back to the point where it disengages my abs. So I don't want an anterior pelvic tilt. As well, just as detrimental is a posterior pelvic tilt. Okay, so you don't want an excessively anterior tilt, you don't want an excessively posterior tilt. You're trying to find somewhere in the middle where you can lock your abs, stiffen your rib cage, stiffen your low back, and have an equal amount of work coming through your abs and your low back. So what I'm going to do next is show you the test, the push-up test with the dowel rod. That's going to help you figure out if you can do a push-up with perfect body alignment or if there's still some areas you need to work on. So you're going to grab a dowel rod, a broomstick, anything will work. I find dowel rod works best. And what you're going to do is line up in an all-fours position. So with your hands under the shoulders, your knees under the hips, trying to keep neutral hips best you can, your shoulders down and back. You're going to grab this dowel rod and you're just going to lay it on your back gently. Alright, so in this position, the first thing is you want 3 points of contact with the stick. You want the back of your head touching the stick, the space in between your shoulder blades touching the stick, as well as your tailbone remaining in contact with the stick the entire time. So from here, you're going to walk it out into a strong push-up position, making sure the stick still stays steady. And then you're going to try to do push-ups like this, chest to the ground, making sure all 3 points of contact stay touching the stick. That's 10. Walk it back in. And if the stick can stay steady on your back, then you pass. And you have great push-up form. But if you're letting your shoulders shrug, if you're letting your shoulders internally rotate, or you have your hips in an excessively anterior or posterior tilt, the stick's going to move around. Your low back's going to hurt if your hips aren't in the right position. So it's a good way to offer you feedback. If you don't have a trainer, you don't have a coach, you don't have a training partner, or somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, you can use this stick to help with body awareness. It can offer you feedback, and it can bring you that much closer to mastering your push-up. So I hope those tips helped. Peace.